Hi, Contessa. Thank you so much for the amazing feedback on what I learned from my job search. Being in the hot seat is definitely a little nerve-wracking. And the TLDR for anyone new is that I recently started a new full-time job working as a senior content marketing manager at Atlassian. And we've been chatting through what I learned in this wild job market that is 2024. Since we covered the search itself, we're now going to move forward down the process and talk a little bit more about how I set myself up for success in my first 90 days. And we have Marnie Lemonik, one of our Career Contessa coaches, also back to fill in the role of interviewer again. Hi, Marnie.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be back. And I think it's going to be really fun to pick your brain on this topic, Lauren. It's the perfect time with the September surge and a lot of job openings coming up.
Yeah, I think that is true. And I feel like, I don't know about you, Marnie, but on like LinkedIn, especially, I think it's like ebbs and flows between, I see a lot of people who are announcing new jobs and people who are announcing layoffs. So it's like, I feel like we take one step forward, two steps back. So regardless of where you are in the process, you can use the job search one that I did before, because definitely have been in the process. Or if you do get the job, then this episode might be helpful too.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's helpful stuff to pick up regardless of where you're at.
Cool. All right. So I'm in the hot seat. Hit me.
Awesome. Well, I want to start by talking right after your job search ended, but before your new role began. Did you do anything to mark the end of your full-time entrepreneurial chapter? I know that was such a big part of your life, 10 years. Was there anything that you wanted to do to really mark it?
The big part for me was sort of the transition. So it was actually a very busy time because it was like, okay, now I'm anticipating being very busy with this new job. And so what do I need to do with my transition at Career Contessa and really like aligning your ducks in a row? It kind of reminds me of like anyone who's gone to college before. It's like before you go to college, there's so much prep work because you're going through that transition. That's sort of what it felt like. I was like, okay, I know this big thing is coming my way. How do I prepare Career Contessa? And also, I had to really give some thought into what that looked like. It obviously was dependent on like who wanted to stay on, and a bunch of things were up in the air. So it was actually like a
Mhm.
very busy time. I was
Makes
also
sense.
moving in the midst of all of that, so it was like so many things at once, and I was like, this is just so ironic how the universe works. But yeah, so yeah, I was actually ironically more busy. And you know what I think is interesting is we're talking about rest time. I wish I had taken more rest time because I think it can be super beneficial, to take some rest time before you go into that new job or whatever new chapter it is in your life. And actually, speaking of stressors and rest time, a while back, a company called Magic Mind reached out about doing a potential sponsorship, and they sent me a few shots to try to see if they worked for me before sponsoring the episode. And I will tell you guys, it could not have come at a better time. Like I said, I was in the midst of starting a new job, transitioning things with Career Contessa, dealing with ongoing life with toddlers, moving, all the things. Magic Mind is a mental performance shot. So it's really just a great addition to your daily routine, and it helps reduce stress and also gives you focus, keeps you mentally clear so you can be productive and motivated. Think of it like a daily vitamin, but for your mind. I've been taking it first thing in the morning for a few weeks, and I had started it back when, a couple months ago when I made this transition. And it has really made a big difference in my focus and helping me manage my stress levels and just kind of feeling a little overwhelmed at times. Magic Mind's formula includes herbs that are safe and effective at stress reduction, helping calm yourself and lifting your mood without depleting your energy bank. It's 100% safe, and all ingredients are third party tested and sourced from the best supplies. It's also helpful that it includes time release caffeine, which, little fun fact that I recently learned about caffeine is that it doesn't give you energy, it just blocks the neuroreceptors in your brain that tell you you're tired. So, FYI, if anyone didn't know. So, 1 to 3 hours after you've had your caffeine, your energy levels drop. But when you use Magic Mind, their formula uses 12 active ingredients to help support the body's natural energy engine. So also with Magic Mind, it's not a replacement for coffee. It can be added to your morning routine, and it actually can make your coffee last all day long, or at least that effect. I have definitely noticed that with my own energy levels, I don't feel like I need that 3 p.m. caffeine hit or anything like that. And there's no risk. Magic Mind is confident in what they built, so they offer 100% refunds, no questions asked, for 100 days after buying. Listeners have a limited time offer that you can use right now that will get you 48% off your first subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase with the code Contessa at checkout. So you can claim this at magicmind, M-I-N-D, so mine, .com/Contessa. All right, Marnie, I'm back in the hot seat for you.
Perfect. I didn't realize that you had so much going on when you were starting the new job. I think that is really natural. They always say when it rains, it pours, and I don't know
Yeah,
how the universe knows, but it knows. So that's an
definitely.
interesting tidbit that I wasn't aware of. I'm curious in terms of just, trying to take some time for yourself and orient with all the changes happening as you started to really direct your energy to the new role that you had in front of you. I got a question on Instagram that I want to have you speak to about setting yourself up for success in particular, because I think a lot of people want to feel prepared and do stuff before. But the question itself was, how do you set intentions and boundaries when starting a new role? So is there anything you did to mentally prime yourself before day one?
I did. I was very nervous about going back, quote, in-house or corporate, a place where I wasn't in charge. And so I feel like I kind of overthought things, maybe to a good extent, because I did think about boundaries. I was like, what are the boundaries I want to have in this role? How do I want to be treated? What message do I want to send to people? Boundaries are nothing if they're not communicated. And so one of the first things I did, so Atlassian does this ritual where you write a welcome blog post about yourself. And they also have something that I'm now in charge of at Atlassian, is their playbook, which has these practices that help people and teams work more effectively. One of the things in there is called a My User Manual. We can put the link in the show notes. And the user manual is all about like how you prefer to work. How do you prefer to communicate? And so these were things that I thought about and I basically put into my welcome blog to the team, like who I am, my interests, how I like to work, how to work best with me. And I filled out the user manual as well. So it was literally not just something I thought about and talked about, it was something I wrote about, I shared with people, and put it in. I shared it in the Slack groups with people to try to bring attention. Like, hi, I'm new to the team. Here's my blog. Like, anytime I'm introducing myself to someone at Atlassian, we use Slack for everything. When I say, hi, I'm Lauren, I hyperlink Lauren to my welcome blog post. If they want to learn more about me and kind of like how I work best and how I work well with others, they can. So I've consistently thought about like boundaries in a way is like managing expectations. The other thing I did and I thought about was we keep open calendars. Now you don't have to have it say every name of like your appointment. You could just say appointment or busy. Like that is a tool that you can use in the calendar. I actually keep my calendar open and I quote parent out loud. So I will put on there kid drop off, please no meetings, or like I have to take my daughter to therapy and I will say like therapy commute, please no meetings. So like I know that sounds more like I'm basically telling people when and how I can work, but I'm also trying to set expectations around I'm not going to always be available 24/7. Here's how you can anticipate, good times to work with me or something like that. And I set office hours. So I actually was a little maybe extreme with like kind of setting that stuff up and trying to use the tech tools that we use to do that. So calendar tools, Slack. There's this really cool app on Slack called Clockwise that you can that basically will like update your status so people know. So like I just like leaned in heavily to like, okay, what tools are available to set boundaries and to design the work week in a way that works for me.
I love that. I think outside of being super open, it also requires a little bit of vulnerability on your side, it sounds like. And it's still professional vulnerability. You're not going too far off on the personal path, but I think the fact that you're willing to do that in a leader on the team is just, I'm sure, culturally helps a lot. And I think that's really unique to have that welcome blog. And even if someone doesn't have that at the organization that they're joining, maybe they could put together something similar to at
Yeah.
least guide the first conversation with their manager.
Totally. And the user manual, again, we'll put it in the show notes. It's a free tool that anybody could use. Like you could have your team do. And honestly, I've never worked at a place where that was the norm before to write a welcome blog and do that. And I'm so happy that that is the culture. I think everybody could benefit from that.
Yeah, I totally agree. You just spoke to being a working mom, which was actually part of the next question. So I definitely want to get into that in a little bit more detail because I know when we chatted about your job search, you mentioned it was a bonus that your new manager is also a parent. And just thinking that it's helpful to really understand the reality of everything that comes from being a working parent. So, was there anything about your schedule as it relates to motherhood that you really wanted to plan when you were starting the new role? Obviously, you talked about therapy and blocking appointments, but was this an actual conversation that you had with your manager, or was it something that was communicated just through those calendar blocks? I think sometimes people want to set those boundaries in relation to parenting, but they're not sure how to go about it.
Yeah, I wasn't totally sure, like, how much are you supposed to put in your calendar? How much are you not? I will say one
Mhm.
of the things I did is I like went and looked at everyone else's calendars. Like, how do they set up their appointment? Like, how do they share their schedule? I think it's especially important when you're doing hybrid or remote, or even like, to be honest, everybody's distributed now. So really anybody could benefit from this. I think when you're in the office all the time and you see people, there's a natural default of like, I'm here if you see me, and I'm not if I'm not. But we all know the lines get so blurred. So Atlassian, definitely, because we are a remote first company, or like most of us work remotely. Um, I think it's like very strongly built into the culture there. So I will say, like, I got a little lucky that this is sort of what they, you know, this is what they preach, and they do it. So I did have a so first I peeked everyone's calendars to kind of see how they blocked off things, how much they were sharing, that kind of thing. People were pretty open. The next thing I did is I did ask my boss. I was like, what can you tell me about sort of like communication norms around here? She's like, we don't really use email. We mostly use Slack, so we kind of went over those expectations. And I did ask her, I was like, look, I do have kid drop off. I have kid pickup. Like, what do you do in these situations? And I tried to think about as many things up front, like what happens when my kid's home from sick or home sick randomly? What do I do? Like, and I actually was in a meeting the other day where I didn't have childcare. My child came into the room and everyone was very sweet on the Zoom call to say hello. But the point being is like trying to think of those things up front to ask, almost kind of gave me permission and also guided some direction on how I do things. I All that being said, the best way to do this is kind of these teams that lead by example, which is why it's so important to work for managers and leaders who you respect, who, are not just telling you to do something, but also do it as well. I think had my manager said one thing and acted another way, it would have been very concerning, like a major red flag.
Yeah, you just dropped so much good wisdom there. I think there's 2 points I want to plus into quickly before we move on. The fact that you had a sense that they do practice what they preach, I think is a testament to the research that you did in the interviewing stage and that you asked the right questions. So that's so nice that you were able to find a culture that you were excited about. I also think the fact that you not only set your boundaries and communicated as you thought made sense, but you also took a beat to effectively read the room and see what the norms were, ask your manager, shows a level of self-awareness that I think is really important, because I think sometimes we can swing a little too far the other way and being like boundary happy in today's day and age, and then you don't want to do anything that comes off a little tone deaf to the culture
Right.
that you're within. So I think it is such a fine balance, and you explained that all really well.
Yeah, and virtual reading a virtual culture, whether you're hybrid in an office, working district, like we all have to do this a little bit. And I think
Mhm.
you use the right word, like self-awareness is really important, especially in virtual cultures.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to move a little bit more to the tactical side of things now. I think a lot of people are familiar with the concept of a 30, 60, 90, and I know sometimes you are given it by your employer and sometimes you're not, and it's something that you can put together yourself. I assume, just based on how thorough the onboarding is, you probably got something from Atlassian. I don't know if that's accurate. Can you walk us through what that looked like for you?
I absolutely did. And so again, every company is different. Virtual onboarding, I've shared this before. It is not for the meek and mild. There were plenty of
Mhm.
moments where I was like, I'm tech illiterate. I do not know how to work a computer. Like, if you've ever felt that way, that is normal. So after I got over that hurdle and I could actually get access to things, it was then like there's the tactical part of like you're learning new technologies. Like I remember, so we use Atlassian tools, so Confluence, Jira, and then we use Slack. We don't really use email that much, but email is on Gmail. Um, what's ironic is there was a person in my onboarding group where he was new to Slack, he was new to Gmail, and he was new to Atlassian tools. And I was like, oh my God, this poor person. Like, he has no idea how to communicate. But so like, I do want to go over just sort of like mentally prepare yourself. It's going to take time. Give yourself some grace. You're not tech illiterate. You're just figuring it out. And I asked plenty of dumb questions, or what I thought were dumb questions, and people were so nice about figuring that out. Then once I could get access to these tools, I did have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. I will be very honest. I was very on top of my 30-day plan, partially because it was much more, I guess, like it had more of like a formula to it. I had to take a bunch of like online classes that they, for obviously there's like the sexual harassment class. There's the like, hey, don't open phishing emails or the whole company can go under kind of classes, that kind of stuff. So I feel like the first 30 days I was way better about it. 60 and 90 days, to be honest, I didn't really stick to that plan, but I had kind of made my own plan. And I actually appreciated that my manager didn't get like super granular in the detail of the 60 and 90-day, because it really said like, okay, in the first 30 days, my main expectation for you is to meet these stakeholders, like get a really good idea. Like it was essentially setting the expectation of like, in your first 30 days, we're not expecting you to necessarily produce something. We're expecting you to your point, read the room, understand what's going on, get a grasp on things. And that is hard to do. And it does take time. So I actually feel like the fact that she wasn't overly granular with 60 and 90 empowered me to be like, okay, I've taken the first 30 days and I've done all these things, plus all the things I like legally have to do as a new employee, right? Part of that onboarding. Now I feel like I can come to you and we can work together on that 60-day plan, that 90-day plan. For example, in the 60-day plan, it was working on strategy documents. It was getting certain stakeholders to agree to things. It was figuring out how to submit creative tickets and web tickets and stuff like that. It was writing some drafts. In the first 90 days, it was trying to figure out how to get something published. And like I said, I work on something called the Team Playbook, which is one of the external, content assets at Atlassian. But it doesn't work the way you would just like publish a blog. There's like something else. So nothing is like, I think it's good that nothing is totally set in stone when you are first starting out, and that you can develop it on the fly and kind of update it in real time.
I think it's really smart that you're also saying it can be updated in real time and be iterated on, and that's a positive thing. I think a lot of people look at that, and when they don't have super set structure, especially when they're in a new environment, it can overwhelm them or cause them to be a little less confident. But I think that is the right approach, to think, okay, I can make this something that is uniquely my own in terms of the skills that I bring, and work with my manager hand in hand. It doesn't have to be everything laid out for me perfectly.
Yeah, and I would say one of the big things I was doing when I was having conversations with stakeholders or people who I was going to be working with, I focused on three main things. Like, what is their job? Like, what do they do? What are their goals? So what are they working toward? Maybe how did they get in the role? How they work specifically with this role, or what they want this role, how this role can support them. So I tried to come at all of those conversations from a place of like, learning about them, not necessarily like trying to insert myself and be like, look how smart I am, or this is all about me. I really try to use those mostly as times to learn about, well, what's important to them and what are they working toward, and maybe how could I be helpful to them. And I think the same tips that you hear about networking, for external networking, is relevant to internal networking at an organization. I got asked this the other day because I'm now interviewing candidates again in life, because I work for a big company, and someone asked me a question about skills I've used at Atlassian. I would say the number one skill that I have used since I got here is really like influencing. I have to work with a bunch of other people. I can't, I'm not really on an island on my own where I can do everything on my own. So I need to work with other people. That has been the number one skill I've used, is how do I collaborate with other people? How do I influence other people to be excited about this thing that I need from them? That's not a skill set I probably would have thought on day one that I would be using the most. Maybe I thought it was going to be writing or editing or something more tactical. And it's definitely more of one of those interpersonal skills.
Yeah, which I think speaks so well to something we touched on in the job search episode, which is so much of the job search is just gathering this skill set that you are going to use again for the future. So not only will you use those skills when you look for jobs in the future, but you also will probably use them in your full-time job.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you spoke to the overwhelm with new technology a little bit, but I want to talk more specifically about confidence. And if you have any tips on how to maintain your confidence when you're a beginner. I always tell people, if you're not overwhelmed relatively consistently in the first month of your job, then I feel like something's probably wrong. It is so overwhelming to be new, especially when you're coming from doing a job for a long period of time and you have that confidence of just being able to do stuff with your eyes closed. So how did you hype yourself up and kind of keep your spirits high as you were adjusting?
So I've already started my own private Slack channel with myself about Lauren wins. And when people said
Learn
nice
wins.
things, yeah, Lauren wins.
I
When
love
people
that.
said nice things or sent me stuff, I screenshot it, I put it in there, so I've already created the smile file that I do think is valuable. Um, I also have, I am a paper and pen person. So even though I have all this technology, I do keep a running list. It's like the little square at the bottom of my page and the bottom right side of my page. That sort of is my way of saying, like, how am I feeling today? And trying to get some of those feelings on paper, I find is really helpful. So, like, I'm feeling kind of nervous today. I'm not totally sure what I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm feeling kind of like overwhelmed because there's too many things I don't know where to start. Like sometimes I think that part is really helpful for me. One thing I know about confidence is, we always think of it as like, oh, if I was successful, I would be confident. Success is like the worst teacher for confidence, because confidence is one of those things where you build your confidence by doing. And so I do have a natural default um, personality where, like, I don't just wait around for things to happen. I go out and do them. I like probably over communicate. Those things have really helped me, I think, feel like I'm doing a good job or I'm being confident. And something I have had to like straight up ask for is like, am I meeting your expectations? So like sometimes I think too, if you're not feeling confident and you're like, this might be just a me thing, let me actually like ask the person versus like swim in my head of emotions for the next 3 weeks. I've found that to be really helpful. And again, one of the things that I'm lucky about, I think I'm part of a culture that really does default to recognition of people. So I'm lucky about that, but also I try as much to give it back to people. So when people do a good job or help me, I try to like send them a kudos, say something nice about them to their manager. Um, and so confidence is sort of, I think of it as like, yeah, I have my own personal confidence, but how can I also build someone else's confidence? Because that sort of helps me in a different way also. I will admit I've also had moments of like, I was publishing something the other day and I was like, I don't know if this is the quality bar that you guys think it is. And my manager was like, just default to action, have a bias toward action. I would rather you publish something and it not be to the quality bar than you sit there, like basically an analysis paralysis. That is such helpful feedback. And I feel like more managers should kind of give that permission to people, because people, I think, inherently want to do a good job. And sometimes they're just like, is it not a good enough job? So anyway, that's just been my personal experience and something that I have I think like leaning a little bit more toward is like saying the quiet things out loud.
Saying the quiet things out loud is a really good way to put it. Yeah, bias towards action was a value at a company I worked at, and I feel like it gave everyone permission to make progress and know that sometimes there's going to be failure as part of progress, but at least you're moving forward versus being stagnant. I
Right.
think that's such good advice. I want to talk just quickly about future planning, because now you're more settled into your role, you're past that 90-day mark. And something that I see in coaching all the time, I'm sure you've seen it too, is this pull to then figure out, okay, what's next? I am in the swing of my current role, so now I have to figure out the 10 steps that are ahead of me. Do you feel that pressure? And if so, can you talk about how you've combated it? And if not, can you teach us the way?
Yeah. I agree. I think one of the hardest things today is to stay present, right? Like you're in a Zoom meeting and you can be like Googling something at the same time while they're saying it.
Mhm.
Like it's very hard to stay present just in general today, especially with work. You know, I I'm trying really hard to like I guess like just be present, be in this role and do kind of, do a good job in what I'm doing. Um, I can't, I guess when I think about like what's next, I don't think about it in terms of like, oh, am I going to get promoted or is this thing going to happen? I'm
Mhm.
trying to think more, a little bit more short term in like, okay, this week, here's like the top two things I really want to get done this week. So another thing, it's part of Atlassian's tools, but we basically have a culture of transparent goals. So, there's OKRs that are set at the organizational level, they trickle down to all the teams. And so everybody is constantly updating the tool that we have, it's called Atlas, but the tool that we have to kind of update our projects and goals. And I think that actually weirdly helps you kind of stay a little bit more grounded and not think so far ahead, because every week you're having to check in on like what's your progress. Or if it's not every week, I bet you there's teams that are doing it every month. I think that's actually helpful. I think sometimes the challenge is sort of like staying realistic of like, okay, I want to make progress, but progress is made like an inch at a time, right? And so I guess naturally I haven't thought too far down the road other than like, okay, this week these are the big rocks that I'm trying to move, and I'm trying to move them a little bit more forward and provide some context so the people who are stakeholders who haven't, my goals impact what they're doing, they're in the know. And yet at the same time, I do want to keep my eyes and ears open if there's something really cool that someone's working on and I can be a part of it, or if I can listen in. Like we just did this really fun brainstorm thing this week for like an April Fool's thing that they do every year. Like I want to be part of creative things, but I'm not going to overly focus now in April. You know what I mean? Even though it's the
Mhm.
fall. So I think it's a challenge for everybody. I also think there's a danger in getting too stagnant. So, at the same time, one thing that I haven't been as good at, that's some feedback for myself that I should continue to work on, is now that I have this role and, things with Career Contessa are kind of in the next phase, I've been very stagnant in continuing to have like my own personal brand, or what is that? And so I'd like, that's something I would actually like to take some time to think about. So I think it's less about staying present and more about priorities and focus areas.
Yeah, I love the tip of being present in particular because I think sometimes we have the pull to sort the future or get it all figured out when we're really unhappy in the present. So if you can master just enjoying or finding fulfillment or even that motivation in what you're doing now, it can help release that pressure and know that the future will sort itself out in due time. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, and I just had, I just lived through the personal experience of like, I thought my job search would have, I was gonna land in a different role at a different company. So I'm very much, just so everyone knows, I am drinking the strong Kool-Aid of like, stay in the present, the best is yet to come. You never know. Like I'm in that like honeymoon stage right now. So, ask me in 6 months, but like that's where I'm at right now because I just experienced it.
Yeah, I totally get that. Do we have time for one more quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I asked you a similar question when we chatted job search, but I think hindsight's always 2020. So I want to ask you the same one again. If you were to go back into your onboarding period differently, is there anything that you would have changed?
Um, I don't think so, because so I onboarded in a really unique time where I started and for 2 weeks. I kind of like was on my own, and then I got to go to their annual event, Atlassian's annual
Mm,
event. So I purposely wouldn't change anything because I felt like that was such a good timeline of like 2 weeks to kind of like talk to people, try to figure it out. Oh, and then I get this like full context meeting people in person, you know, obviously it's the annual event where they're announcing everything they're doing. So you're like, oh, this is like literally like the summary or the cliff notes of like everything that maybe just happened the last year. Um, I in No, so I don't, so far I don't have any regrets about the onboarding process or anything like that. Um, I think maybe if anything, there were times during the onboarding process where I was feeling almost impatient to take action. If anything, I might have gone back to myself and said, like, just listen and take it in. You don't have to act on day two or at day three. I think I was maybe a little impatient with like almost like this feeling like you want to prove yourself, like prove to them like they made the right choice by being like, I'm going to do all these things. I can do this. I can do that. If anything, I would say I wish I could go back and tell myself to like slow down the speed just a little bit. It's it's not going to hurt you, and it will probably only help you. Because I also think that it can be, I think I can be a little overwhelming to other people about wanting to take action right away and having that bias toward action. And it's like, I think the key to having a skill set like this, and I think a lot of women are like this, it's like we have a lot of things on our plate where like, especially if you have those perfectionist tendencies, or people pleaser tendencies, any of the above. But I don't think I think sometimes I'm a little overwhelming. And so, if I had some feedback for myself, it would have been actually to maybe like take a step back a little bit.
Yeah, that's really good self-awareness. Speaking of the theme from earlier, and not everyone is as action oriented. So yeah, I've had that same experience. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if people like this episode or want to hear more about more job searching or more, early days at a new job and or just going through a transition, I was thinking about like so many people are probably in these transitional periods, especially when there are tough job markets, because it just makes you think about things. Please let us know because these are really fun and or hopefully I hope you guys think they're fun.
We think they're fun.
Yeah, if you guys think they're fun. And then obviously would love to have Marnie back on the show. Actually, Marnie, you are coming back on the show. We're doing an episode very soon with you. So I won't tease that out too much. Okay, if you guys do want more episodes like this, remember to message me or Marnie. I'm mostly on LinkedIn. Marnie also has an Instagram that she keeps active. Again, we can talk about really anything. Just let us know. All that info will be in the show notes. And if you are looking for one-on-one support in your career, don't forget that you can book a personalized career coaching session with Marnie. Info to book with her is also in the show notes. And Marnie, tell everybody what you're offering. You have something fun.
Yeah, we're going to do a giveaway and it's going to be $100 that you can use with me, which that gets you either a 30-minute session or a full resume review. So if you're someone who is on the job search or just want to chat anything career related, it doesn't have to be job search at all. Then all you have to do to enter is go to the collaborated reel we're going to have on Instagram between Career Contessa and myself. Follow both of our accounts, which will put the links in the show notes, and comment your favorite part of the episode.
And also, Marnie, tell them a little, you have this really cool tool because obviously some people might be in the midst of the job search and interviewing. So tell them about your interview prep ebook that we will also put in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. So I work with people on a lot of different aspects of the job search, but I think the one key theme that I've noticed hundreds of times over is certain struggles that everyone has when it comes to interview prep in terms of not knowing how to answer, tell me about yourself, or not knowing how to put together professional stories in a way that is thorough enough, but not too long-winded, regardless of how great your personality is. These are normally things that people tend to have a problem with. So I've put all of my best practices from my coaching sessions into that ebook because I really want to make sure that something is accessible to people at all levels. So if you have any interviews coming up, it's a good tool. I would wait to do it until you have a specific interview to prep for, just because there are prompts in there for why this company, why this role. It's a little bit more helpful if you have an exact example to work around.
And I can just speak from recent experience. We just did an interview where there were 3 really good candidates. And to your point, it is really interesting how personality cannot make up experience, good storytelling, concise, connecting the dots. So anyway, I just want to like double click on that because I feel like that is very, very true. And I think people often underestimate the importance of interview prep. So maybe we should make another episode on that. I like, how do you prep for a big interview? But anyway, if you guys like that idea, message me or Marnie. Everything's in the show notes. And Marnie, thank you again for being a great interviewer and putting me in the hot seat.
Thank you. It's always so much fun. Appreciate you having me.